Welcome to Monday, the 6th of May's edition of 4020 Not Live. It is a bank holiday, but we're still here. We could have been footballers, Phil, but we had a paper round instead. So we're here to talk about the world of rugby league. James Child is somewhere foreign. So we've got a foreigner. John Davidson joins us. John, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Very well, Rich. How are you?
Oh, it's good to see your Wi-Fi is working, so that's a positive.
that's actually I paid the bill this month.
We get so many comments on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, emails, phone calls. Everyone wants to get in touch with this program about a million different things. I don't know where to start this way. We'll do news first because that's where we tend to be. But you've given us this list of things, Phil, and John, even Phil's given me no list of things to do. And pretty much everything on your list, John, is to do with matches that have been played. Has there been any other news apart from signings? And have there been any signings from May the 1st that either we didn't know or are exciting? Because I find them all a bit, I'm going to say dull so far, because everything's pretty much gone as you'd expect.
I don't think there's anything that's come out in the last few days or hours that's been confirmed that would probably knock your socks off, Rich. Yeah, I think there's a lot of deals obviously being done that will be announced in 3 months or 4 months, and a lot of them you already know about. I think the big one, which was a surprise, was John Asiata, and I think that's obviously annoyed a lot of people, excited some people, but probably shocked quite a few because just I think the manner in it was, the deal was done, and then the leak, and then the announcement seems to have ruffled some feathers in Leigh, shall we say.
Context is amazingly important. So if I say that Hull FC were described as desperate, they are not the words of myself. They are the words of Derek Beaumont of Leigh Leopards. And so what happens here? Obviously, someone somewhere tells a journalist the story, they release it, and then all hell breaks loose. Well, in Leigh at least.
Well, I think there was a story came out, and then the club announced the signing, didn't they? And I think that generally there's a protocol amongst the clubs, amongst the CEOs, that signings for next year are announced usually in the off season, or if not, months away. And it does sort of smack of a club that obviously they had the Paul Rowley episode, which was a bad look, a bit of a slap in the face, and they needed some good news, and they publicly announced the signing, and it hasn't gone down well with the Leopards,
who immediately recalled Ed Chamberlain as retribution.
Well, the other element is obviously the interest in Adrian Lamb, should I say? Couldn't pronounce his name; it was so difficult. As a potential head coach. They've not got Paul Rowley; they're not getting Lee Briers, and Adrian Lamb seems to be perhaps the number one target at the moment. So, there's a rivalry between Leigh and LFC that's growing by the minute.
I don't think they will appoint a new coach now. I think Simon Grix has brought around the measure of improvement they were looking at over the last couple of rounds. They've got a big signing announced to get the fans back on board, and you can absolutely see why Hull would want their season ticket holders to know that they'd signed somebody who the year before last was one of the best players in the competition. We can debate whether it's worth the alleged money that they're paying for a 3-year deal at that age and with that injury record. But clearly that's someone who they feel they can build their future around. So you can understand why they do that. But I don't think now they will be forced into making an appointment, because certainly their first choice didn't happen. I think Richie Myler and Simon Grix were together at Warrington. They know each other. I think they have an understanding amongst each other about perhaps what's needed to get to the end of this season. I'm not sure that it's anything now other than a building year. I think with the greatest respect to Hull, they're not planning on mounting a charge for the playoffs. So when you play this again in 4 months' time and they're sixth, that you can remind me. But I do think the most important thing for them is their game in London on Sunday, which actually has a huge amount of intrigue attached to it, purely because it's almost sitting by the guillotine. But I think Hull are improving. Simon Grix is in charge of that at the moment, and there would be no rush to appoint a coach, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is then what happened at Warrington. the other night. So you could say a budding rivalry there with Warrington and Hull. So Richie Miller seems to have ruffled a few feathers in the first couple of weeks of his appointment. It's my understanding they've signed Ollie Holmes from Leigh for next year as well, a 2-year deal. I don't think Leigh wanted to keep Ollie Holmes, so there's no bad blood there. But yeah, it's obviously a well that they're digging from, and they're looking to build a squad that will obviously perform a lot better this year than it has. Next year than it has this year.
Finally, a second row and podcaster, so it's always good to have useful skills there in Ollie Holmes. Warrington Hull, we may as well start there because we started talking about Hull, and the big talking point after it is the big fight. It's the one we're all gonna look forward to Wembley and the pre-match entertainment, depending on whether Warrington are there or not. Big scrap in the middle of the field. Sam Burgess versus Richie Myler. Catch weight contest, I think it's fair to say. Did Hull do anything wrong? Because I'm of the opinion that it's Warrington's mistake. So Hull, they just run gentlemanly? Is that a thing anymore?
Yeah, I think they just basically went by the rules, didn't they? They probably thought that Warrington were trying to get an advantage and didn't want to stop that. But it obviously upset Warrington, upset Sam Burgess, and then the shoulder charge in the in the alley was interesting. Well, I mean, if I was Richie Moll, I would have stepped out of the way quite swiftly. If you see a Burgess staring down at you, but yeah, Sam Burgess was obviously not happy in the press conference. I think maybe Phil had spoken about this before, but he's been very measured in his comments to the media, his interviews. He's not really said a lot, but he's been very calm. But that really got under his skin. So there was quite a bit of passion on display. I can see kind of both sides' argument, really.
I didn't see it live, and clearly social media can blow something up beyond what it actually is. Whenever a game's on telly, you're not going to miss much these days, are you? So no, I suspect they probably had a different philosophical approach to what should have happened, but morally, I think Hull were absolutely right to stand their ground on that. But I can't wait for the two teams to play again, as you say. If we're looking for pre-match entertainment, or Sky are looking for, remember the old ITV Brian Clough and
Don Revie
interview. If Sky have got anything about them, they've got to get Richie Myler and Sam Burgess on together with Brian Carney in the middle of them, goading both, and that would be diamond television. We'd not only get a renewal of a deal, but we'd probably get it double.
Have you ever seen that, John? By the way,
I have. I've read the Damn United, and I've seen the film, and I think I've actually even watched the YouTube clips. I mean, I think those were in the days when people were a little bit less media conscious and worried about how they present. But yeah, it was great. It was great TV viewing, and you wouldn't really get Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola doing that today, would you?
Is this our equivalent of Pizzagate, do you think?
Well, I think unless food's involved, I mean, they could have thrown some mushy peas or something. But no, I mean, on a serious note, I mean, rugby league's a tribal game. It's about rivalries, and the only sort of rival. Well, you could say you see rivalry in the stands at Hull KR on the weekend with St Helens, perhaps going too far. But it is good to see. You want passion, and you want rivalry, and you want talking points, and that was certainly one. I think Sky handled it well. The cameraman spotted it, so it was always good to get that on the coverage.
Just on Sam, news obviously was Jason Demetriou losing his job at Souths. Talk of Wayne Bennett being the first choice candidate, and we've seen what he's done at the Dolphins, and that he likes to bring somebody in to ensure succession planning for when he's left, someone who he perhaps knows, trusts, maybe someone who even knows the internal dynamics of the club. All of those fit the CV of a certain Mr. S. Burgess. Now, there's no question that he'll leave before the end of this season, particularly as he's 80 minutes away from taking his team to Wembley and amongst one of 700 teams that are joint top of the league at the moment. But can you see him there at the start of next season under Wayne Bennett, Wayne dealing with Luttrell and whoever he needs to deal with to get the culture right. And Sam's starting doing his coaching career to take over when the big cowboy moves on.
You mean in at the start of 2026, not the start of next year? Yeah.
No, I think the start of next year. I think if
Right.
if Wayne's going in, he'd want that in place when he arrived.
I think there's a few things. So if you look at and Wayne, obviously, you know, he might be 400 years old, but he's still doing a great job, and he lives to coach. I'm just reading actually Andrew Webster's new book on him, and it's a fascinating read into the man and his background. In looking at the clubs that Wayne's left and the successes that he's anointed, it's not usually worked out well. You look at Ivan Henjak at the Broncos, you look at Steve Price at the Dragons, who was at the Knights, I can't remember, but it all ended badly. And it has ended badly eventually for Jason Demetriou. So I would imagine the South Sydney club, the board, would want to have some input into who his successor would be. And Sam Burgess is obviously a legend of the club, and very close with Russell Crowe, but Russell Crowe doesn't have the dominant say at South like he used to. There's two other owners, one being James Packer, son of Kerry Packer. So I'm not sure with Sam whether he would get the support. Obviously, he had some big issues that the club had to deal with. I think the other one, which is interesting considering he's off contract at the end of next year, is Willie Peters. He's from South Sydney, played for South Sydney. Very close ties with the club, and he's obviously doing a fantastic job at Hull KR. So I think with Wayne, you would think with his age, I think he's either 74 or 75, a 2-year deal would make sense. And much like they've done with Christian Wolf, have someone in there alongside him. So who they go for is really interesting, but I don't think there'll be any shortage of candidates. Ben Hornby's there at the moment. He's obviously someone who played under Wayne at St George Illawarra and won a grand final in 2010. Played for New South Wales and Australia. So there'd be a lot of candidates. I think it'll be interesting what Jason Demetriou does, because everyone seems to want to link him to Hull FC. But he started his career here. Obviously, he coached at Keighley, but then had a long apprenticeship in Australia. So it would seem a kind of backward step to come back to Super League for me. And I don't think, even though he has been sacked, I think he's still a quality coach and highly regarded in the NRL.
Well, they can't go back to Lancashire Lynx. That's one thing we do know for sure. I thought the Cat was going to come and talk them, but the Cat's buggered off, unfortunately. Did anything else happen in that game, Warrington and Hull? Because it just seems, on the face of it, I think I watched the Huddersfield game on Friday. It's a long time ago now, but it just seems to be a perfectionary win for the Wolves on the scoreboard, 24 points to 6. I'll take that as a no, because no one...
I didn't see it because I was at...
You were at Leeds.
Again, I've only seen the tries, and it did seem to be Warrington, firmly getting back on their horse as they approach the semi-finals. I think the big thing for Hull is they've now had 2 performances, one after the other, where defensively they've been immeasurably better than earlier in the season. They're getting some players back. It wasn't a surprise, but I haven't seen enough of the game to comment on the quality of it or otherwise.
Now, what certainly wasn't a surprise, John, and you put this top of your agenda, was the victory for Wigan on Thursday, but the distance between the sides in terms of the score by the end of it, having trailed at half-time, Wigan winning 30 points to 8 against Catalans, keeping them scoreless in the second half. The measure of victory was a surprise there for the Warriors.
Yeah, I think they really probably started slowly the first 10, 15 minutes and then really turned it on, and defensively they were outstanding. And some of the tries were beautiful to watch, that sort of interplay with Jai Field and Bevan French. It was exactly the kind of reaction they would have won after losing the Hull KR. So yeah, a great win for Wigan. And yeah, some interesting results across the board this week. Yeah, I think the Warrington game, I think Hull FC, they've definitely, they have improved in recent weeks under Simon Gritz, and they're showing a bit more effort and dedication, but still really not up to scratch in terms of actually getting results against some of the topper teams.
The thing about the Dragons is that's now 2 big defeats, both within the borough of Wigan. Having come off a really good display, probably their best display of the season 2 weeks before. So it's interesting to see where they go. Another couple of players injured. out of that game at Wigan. But Ben Garcia is going to be a huge miss with his failed HIA. It's really interesting this year because you can't get a form handle. I thought Wigan were great in the second half, but if you just took their opening 40 minutes, then clearly they looked a little bit sluggish again coming into the game. French and Field didn't quite fire, but when Field did, he was superb. Harry Smith, obviously the chip over the top, got them back in the game. But it was mainly Catalan, I thought, just falling away from where they've been in the second half. Juni December again, and absolutely another brilliant performance. He really is one of the shining lights of the competition at the moment. But every week we're now getting thrown up fixtures where there genuinely is uncertainty of outcome, which is what we were promised, 2 seasons ago.
Is he on the front of the latest issue of 4020 magazine out later this week?
He certainly is. I wonder why his name came up then. Just to mention that, and obviously shoehorn it in the shops on Friday.
Must have been a busy day on yesterday trying to get the magazine together, and then you've got to answer the phone. It's a nightmare, isn't it, when you're trying to do something?
So many things going on at once.
Oh. Well done to Wigan. They're top of the table, and they've got that game in hand against Leigh to come, of course. But we've got a ridiculous situation where, unlike certain people in the political media who claim things are too close to call, this is too close to call the moment. As you say, Phil, 6 teams, all on 14 points. What's going on? And then you've got Leeds in crisis just below them on 12. They could be joint top of the table. They could have been.
And Huddersfield just below them on 10. No, it's great because we're a third of the way into the season and you can't see that this is going to change anytime soon. I think Hull KR have really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons with their cat amongst the robins, maybe, with their last 2 performances. Came away from Catalan with Willie Peters saying, that clearly is not where we want to be, and the gap between our best and our worst is too great if we're going to play like that. And then in consecutive weeks, destroys 2 of the leading teams, and I think their performance against Saints was magnificent. Not many games over the last 5 years when Saints have been the dominant team where they've conceded 40 points, and you'd have to say that every single one of those was deserved. There wasn't an element of fortune in any of the scores. Hull KR were just brilliant from start to finish, and Saints couldn't handle them. Now, obviously, if you're the kind of Saints fan that thinks you should win 40-0 every week, and we do know at every club there are fans like that, we mentioned at the beginning of the show last week, then, woe is you. But actually, it's not. It was the quality of Hull KR. And the fact that virtually everybody throughout that 17 made a contribution. Up Niall Evans was outstanding. Clearly we know he's a good player, but so much sprung from him at the back. And I just thought, when Mikey Lewis plays the way he does from minute 1 to minute 80, we know how talented he is. But he does sometimes, when the team's behind, drift out of the game for a little while. Not at all on Saturday. I thought he ran the show, and there's a confidence about Hull KR at the moment, building into again a semi-final with Wigan, which already mouthwashing. There's another round of games before we get to that.
I thought the flick pass from Noel Evans for Peter Hiku's try was just sublime. That was just a lovely piece of skill. And they are flying Hull KR. I mean, I put out a tweet earlier today, which seems to have pissed a lot of people off, but I think they're in great form. They did a number on Wigan, they did a number on St Helens. Obviously they're not perfect. They have been beaten this year, but they are in great form, and they do have a kind of air of they could do something really big this year, and that would be winning a trophy for I don't know how many decades Phil or Rich would know, but I think they've got a good chance of doing that. And they're certainly great to watch. They're very entertaining. They've got a well-balanced team across the spine and in the forward pack and, the back line, and all their new signings, particularly their foreign contingent, seem to be, playing very well.
I think Kelechi Noah is one of the signings of the season, and the way they're using him off the bench as well, maximum impact. He's been fantastic. Elliot Minchella, as making him the captain, seems to have brought the best out of him. They've got that hooking duel between Jeslett and Matt Parcell, which they've reversed this year. All of that, everybody seems to be buying into. And Jai Whitbread, who probably never got the opportunity to show what he could do in a team that was struggling week on week. He's come out and given them go forward from the off. So it's a very, very well balanced squad. And it'd be really interesting to see how they go at Warrington on Thursday when we have the Burgess Peaches clash and decide who should be the assistant coach at South.
I think what's also interesting about Hull KR, obviously they're flying on the field, but off the field a bit of a stumble with the sponsorship. I must admit I wasn't fully across the P&O controversy or what impact that had on the city of Hull, but it was interesting to see them backtrack so quickly because you rarely see a professional sporting club do that. So who says that public opinion or the opinion of fans doesn't count, because it was a quick decision to move away from that partnership.
I think it also shows that they are in touch with their community, that even though everything in professional sport now is corporate and business, and if you get a sponsorship of that magnitude, from an employer in that city that is widely thought to be one of the main ones, if not because of what happened, the most respected ones anymore, then it's very hard for your commercial department to turn that down. But I think it shows a lot that you then go public within 24 hours and say, we might have misread this situation and we will turn down the money because, again, this word culture, what we're trying to build within our part of the city is worth more than cash. I think that says a lot about them and the direction that they're going.
I was going to say, I think if you're not in Hull and you weren't touched by it, you probably would have forgotten, because so many things happen in the world that seems to have happened a long time ago. But as you say, credit to the club for making the switch as soon as they did. Hull KR, I was going to say 1997 when they won the Silk Cup plate, but then I remembered, I'm sure they won the Northern Rail Cup, and they did 2005, because I remember it. I was covering it for Ridings FM because they beat Castleford in the final. I'd been made redundant a couple of days earlier, and I was on the road, not made redundant from the radio, from a proper job. And this was one of my great trips to Blackpool with my wife to go watch rugby, and she could not watch the rugby and do something else instead. So I'm glad that she let me go. But Hull KR won it on that occasion, so well done to them. Maybe glorious trophies are in the future for Willie Peters and his men. St Helens.
If you're talking Championship and Challenge Cup, we're going back to the 80s, I think.
You mean proper trophies, not like the 1895 Cup or anything?
Yeah, I meant proper trophies, not these made-up fictional ones.
Don't underestimate the 1895 Cup, because I think that is gathering, to use a Rod Studism, momentum. Because the game of the weekend next weekend, I think, is Wakefield and Bradford in the 1895 Cup semi. That is going to be one big team with a big support base going back to Wembley and playing on a big stage. I think it's a stepping stone now, and if we treat it right and nurture it, and if at some point we can give it some prize money commensurate with the event that it could be, then I think the 1895 with its was it 0.25 grading points attached to it as well, is going to become a major event on the calendar. I seriously think it will. Wembley is shaping up with the women's final, the men's final, and the 1895 to be, well, we could get a sellout this year or something approaching it, because a big team is going to be back there.
And the schools final, which Cardiff are in. You mentioned it, John, and we had a tweet from Kev. On the next pod, will you please mention the wonderful family game that is Rugby League, a place for all ages with friendly bants between opposition fans, no drunken behaviour or foul and abusive language for 80 minutes of the game. We had that statement or punishment from the Rugby Football League a couple of days ago for Saints and Leigh, where they both get a slap on the wrist and a suspended fine, but bother in the stands, which no one wants to see, obviously, and kind of put a bad taste in your mouth after that really good victory for Hull KR. I'm not saying that their fans were at fault, but it takes two to tango and all that.
Yeah, I've no idea who's the fault, but it does seem to be happening. I don't want to say often, but semi-often. It does seem to flare up every now and then, and it just seems to be reflective of the society that we're in, isn't it? People like to be idiots. I don't know whether it's a post-Brexit thing, it's a economic decline thing, it's just a austerity thing, it's just people are unhappy. And I think the scenes that woman throwing the bottle, the St Helens fan throwing the bottle, she's there's been already quite a few memes of her, so she wants to get out and paddle them. Maybe she can make some money off it. Yeah, people trying to ban her from the Totally Wicked Stadium on Facebook very quickly.
The home of Liverpool Football Club women from next season as well, which is very exciting. Already, Liverpool fans blaming St Helens for ruining the pitch, and they haven't even started playing there yet. All laid the new pitch that they're going to play on, which is very exciting.
I mean, that's just smart to get in more revenue for St Helens. I mean, they've got a facility. How many home games do they play? In a year, 15 maybe. If you include, and obviously there's women's games in there. But yeah, it's smart to get more money in, make more money for the club. Which obviously, one signing that's been confirmed now, which we kind of knew because it was out there in the sphere for a week and a half, is Lewis Dodd to South Sydney. So. It'll be interesting how they look to replace him and some of the other players that they've got off contract. I think the squad's going to need a bit of surgery, and obviously some of the fans calling for Paul Whelan's head as well. So yeah, I don't think he'll be getting sacked anytime soon. I think he'll get a contract extension for next year, probably for 2 more years. I would guess. But how they replace Dodd will be interesting because he's a local talent. He's from Widnes, but he came through the club's academy, and obviously I think they would have seen him along with Jack Wellesby as the players to build around for the next decade.
Widnes and Helens, Warrington, it's all the same.
Who do you think is in the market to replace him? I mean, clearly Lachlan is out of favour at South Sydney, and we do seem to be speaking a lot about them at the moment. But
he's got a broken leg, so he won't be playing for anyone for quite some time. No, I think there's probably 2 ways they go about it. I mean, obviously they've got Moses in by there. He's played a lot of half. You could even argue that's his best position. So they could look to move him there permanently and bring in another hooker to sub with Darryl Clark, or they could they could go out into the transfer market and look to make a big signing. And someone like Chad Townsend, who's off contract, who's won a grand final, very experienced. He might be at the Cowboys finishing up, or he might fancy a year in or 2 in Super League. It's a crucial position though, because I think with St Helens, there's been a lot of criticism of their attack, and they have looked clunky at times. They're still, a very good team with some great players, and defensively they're very hard to beat. But perhaps they've lacked at least. The last few months a bit of cutting edge at times. So, whether wing-wise they need some change there. Tommy Makinson will be going, we believe. Wonga Blake's off contract. Conrad Hurrell's off contract. So, some change in the back line. It will be fascinating to see which way they go and what the impact is.
I think the other thing about losing Dodd is that, as you say, someone who's come through their academy system, so allowance on the salary cap for him. It'd be very interesting to know who they've got within their junior ranks who is ready to take that step up. I mean, clearly John Bennison was a huge success, I think unexpected with the speed of his acceleration through into the first team. I don't know if there's too many backs that are clamouring to follow his route at the moment. So I think there is going to be some need for some additional expenditure. On the women's thing, you can now see that double headers between the women's team and the Liverpool football team at the beginning and end of the football season, again, makes it a real attraction. It's different audience, and we've spoken about that a lot, that, if you can manage to find a way to promote this outside of what is the norm, then there's income streams there that we haven't tapped into yet. So, at the end of the football season, you can imagine St Helens women playing York, followed by Liverpool playing Manchester United. I don't, that would be fantastic for the club, the stadium, and their revenue.
It's all about the clubs a lot of the clubs are struggling. Obviously, they were all posted losses last year. So any way you can make more money is obviously welcome. And as Rich will know, I think Wakefield were looking to do that last year with their stadium, weren't they? With, I think was it Sheffield Wednesday under 17s? I think there was
I read something about
Academy. Yeah. And obviously Wakefield AFC play there, don't they? So it's just common sense. You own a facility, you want to make the most of it. Obviously, you've got to be careful not to destroy your pitch, but at the same time, you want to create some new income streams. So yeah, smart move by by St Helens for me.
Now, Liverpool Football Club, because you have to call them Liverpool Football Club, you can't just call them Liverpool. They're going to pay for a new pitch to be laid at the Totally Wicked. So it's going to be all singing, all dancing, and hopefully they don't overuse it in the early stages like Wakefield did. And no one moans about getting grazed knees and stuff, but I'm sure because they're women, they won't moan about having grazed knees because they're not, like the bloody idiots who played at Wakefield last year.
Will they get the water put on?
Well, fingers crossed. I mean, it's on now, apparently, at the DIY Kitchen Stadium. We'll come to the championship in a bit. We're coming towards the break, which is the most exciting part of the programme. So we still got to talk about Huddersfield and Salford. We still got to talk about Leeds and the big Golden Point extravaganza between Leigh and Castleford. Is there anything in those games that we've spoken out so far that we need to clear up before we go to a break and come back?
Looking forward to discussing Leigh and Castleford because I thought for pure excitement, obviously that was the game of the weekend and ebbed and flowed to the point where if you were turning on for the first time experiencing rugby league, you'd want to watch some more of that. I think it raised the debate about whether we should have Golden Point or not, which is a pointless debate because we've had it ever since Golden Point was introduced. Some people like it, some people don't like it. That'll always be the case. I actually thought that 10 minutes was it was some of the most exciting Golden Point rugby I've seen played because different philosophies. It wasn't a drop goal-a-thon every time that we got to the last tackle. Defences were great to make sure that opportunities were stopped for players not being near enough to drop a goal. Admittedly, Moylan's that came off the post was particularly unlucky for Leigh, but I just thought Cass were great that they were going right. Last tackle, we're not going to do what we think we're going to do. And we see you've set up to stop the drop goal. We're going to run the ball, and actually to me I like Golden Point. I thought that was a great 10 minutes for rugby.
I was very excited to see David Fafita's on the move, and it's not that one, it's the other one, the good one. So that's the exciting news from Australia. And a surprise he's not been linked with Wakefield yet, along with Elliot Whitehead. We might as well sell in Tommy Makinson, Conrad Hull, everyone. I don't know how we're going to stay under the cap next year. We're not even in Super League yet. We're going to be signing everyone. It's going to be exciting. I can't wait. All that and more to come after the break here on 4020 Not Live. I don't know. Coming up in this second part, Leeds in crisis, but not Leeds men this week because they won, Phil, 46 points to 8 against London Broncos. So everyone's saying, well, we expected to win anyway. We told you we should pick Jack Sinfield. Rowan Smith's still rubbish, but 2 points off the top of the table, Phil. It's all going on at the Rhinos.
Yeah, I think the word that Rowan Smith used to describe the performance was professional, which it was. Potential banana skin with all the white noise surrounding the club at the moment. He did make a couple of big selection decisions, obviously dropping Matt Frawley to bring Jack Sinfield in, which certainly appeased the section of the South Stand that wanted the saviour called up. Swapping Andy Ackers and Jared O'Connor really worked. We talked about the whole KR hooking duo and how that's been reversed. Ackers was superb when he came on. 3 try assists, broke London out of dummy half, and O'Connor's work rate for the time that he was on was massive. Again, topping the tackle count and just giving a bit more directness out of dummy half. The worry for Leeds is that they're losing 3 quarters every week, and if we were to, it was almost after 20 minutes, Brodie Croft had already won the Man of the Match award. He was that dominant and was cutting London to pieces, and then pulled a groin muscle, which, as of when we record, we don't know how serious that is. After the very first play of the game, losing Riley Lum. So listen, Leeds' next 2 games are Catalan away and St Helens away. So we'll have a better idea when those 2 games have been played, if they are genuine top 6 contenders. But 8 different try scorers. We say it every week. Lockie Miller sort of sums up the way they play. When he's good, the team are really good. When he's not composed and trying things and they go wrong, that backfires. He kept everything in check on Friday night. Ran when it was the opportune time to do so. Passed unselfishly for a couple of tries for other players, and they kicked pretty well as well. So I think the problem for London is as we've identified all season, is they're just not big enough. They don't get enough go forward. And whilst they're incredibly willing, they play a lot of off-the-cuff rugby. They just don't have the size to trouble teams at the moment. And whilst Leeds haven't got the biggest pack, they were just on top for most of the game. There was a period in the first half when London got some possession, but tries just before and after half time turned the game, and Leeds were never in trouble. So yeah, don't read too much into it. Let's see if they take that confidence into Perpignan next week.
So is that his official nickname now? The Saviour Jack Sinfield? Is that the official name?
Sir Kevin, his dad, Saviour Jack, for his son.
I think you can come up better with that, Phil. Maybe the second coming, or the Saviour 2, the sequel. I mean, there's much better nicknames, surely.
Well, I mean, what's
Sir Jack?
Yeah, what's you can't give him Jack MBE or something, can you? That's not good, is it? But Ash Hanley linked with a move to Catalans in the French press today, John. Are they just there's no French winger, so they have to replace like for like with English wingers from Super League?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. That's news to me. I mean, it'd be a great signing. I think, last couple of years, I think he's become one of the best wingers in Super League, and deserves to be in England considerations. And some of the tries he scored earlier this year before he got injured were just phenomenal. So he's been at Leeds a long time. I think Phil will know better than me, but a Leeds junior and a local. So maybe he fancies a bit of sun and baguette in the south of France. But I think just building on what Phil said, they were playing London. I mean, you can't really take that. They struggled to beat Hull FC the week before. You can't really put anything into that performance. I mean, I think the sad thing with London is, are they going to win a game this year? Like, I really can't. I can't see it. I mean, you two would know better than me, but what's the sort of record for the worst team in Super League history? Could that be them?
I think it was Halifax, isn't it?
2003, won one game and then had 2 points deducted.
What was the deduction for?
I think it was breach of salary cap or something.
Oh, that's outstanding when you breach the salary cap and you can only get one win.
I think London will turn somebody over because they do play unpredictable. Somebody will go down there with either a heavily injured team or perhaps resting a few players, and they're getting a footing in Super League. And Mike Eccles admitted on Friday. No, we didn't admit. He just acknowledged that they are still a championship team in transition. They're starting to get one or two players back. I think Lewis Bieniek is back this week to play Hull. Ethan Natoli made his Super League debut against Leeds, and just in the time he was on the field, looked like he's going to give them a bit more punch going forward. So I think they will turn an unsuspecting team over this year, but I'm just intrigued to see their game next Sunday against Hull. I know Hull are improving, but just brings back the game earlier in the season at the MKM Stadium that Hull won with the very last play of the game. And again, if you're Mike Eccles and you're looking to build your guys up, just show them that video all week and how close you came.
I think just the London situation just sort of shows the gap between the divisions, and that you can't plan. If you somehow manage to win a grand final in October, you can't plan to be in Super League in 3 months and compete. Adequately. There's not enough time. There's not enough money when it comes to actually coming in the division, and you've got to plan and recruit. And I think Hull KR have shown that. Leigh have shown that. Obviously, last week we had a bit more detail on the IMG grading, so that's going to come into effect soon, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of who comes in and who comes out. It looks like it could be happy days for Mr. Shaw, right?
I wouldn't be surprised to see London recruit again from the French competition when that finishes. It worked really well for them last year. They've saved some salary cap.
I don't think it'll make a lick of difference, Phil, to be honest.
Bolster the squad, because at the moment, a couple of injuries or a couple of players out of form and they can't really be dropped. So you never know. If there's a Corey Norman playing in the French competition that they can tempt over here, that made a difference.
Corey Norman's podcasting, enjoying the trials and tribulations of Paul Kent at the moment, and enjoying some shade and frauder. No, I think Josh Schuster's available. If they've got £400,000, they could throw that to him, and he would make a difference. But
St Helen, should they be after Schuster?
I think, to be honest, no, I don't. Well, the thing with Josh Schuster, it's quite multifaceted. I think what happened, and for those listeners who don't know, his best mate was Keith Titmus, who was a young prop coming through at Manly. They came through the grades together, and he died, essentially died of heat exhaustion from a very brutal preseason training at Manly, which has been the subject of an inquest. And I think the psychological impact of that has been big on him. He's Samoan background. He's obviously his uncle was John Schuster, who I think may have been an All Black, but played for the Knights back in the day, the Newcastle Knights. And he's a bigger build, Samoan heritage. He's always sort of struggled with his weight, but he's a natural ball playing 13, brilliant player, but he's not lived up to the billing, and the contract that he's been given. So he does need a second chance. Whether he can kind of realize his potential will be interesting, but I don't think you can argue his natural talent. But he would be a risk for any club, I think. Just probably the right club who's willing to take that risk. But yeah, it'd be great to see him on a field again and happy, because I think he's had a pretty tough few months. I think he lost a lot of weight in preseason. He trained really hard. Then he got chicken pox, and then I think he had a hand injury. So it just nothing went right for him at Manly, and now he's obviously left the club and looking for a new opportunity.
Huddersfield 16, Salford 18. That was an entertaining game on Friday night. Didn't look at it at half-time when Salford were 12-0 up, but the Giants give them credit coming back into it very, very late in the last 10 minutes. But Huddersfield, with Mark Sneyd and his new contract, the difference between the sides, because he kicked 3 from 3, Jake Connor kicking 2 out of 3. Huddersfield down to 12 men in that one, but no bans again for anyone in Super League. So another week off for the MRP. That's good for them, isn't it? But an important win for Salford, especially gutting it out at the end and clinging on to the 2 points.
I think that red card, can we call it a headbutt? It was more of a love tap. I think that was a bit harsh. I think a yellow card really. I mean, even just a stern warning, just settle down. But that was a killer for Huddersfield. I think they showed a lot of courage to come back in that game, but just that red card was a nightmare.
They are still a bit of an enigma, though, Huddersfield, from one week to the next. One of the performances of the season was their Challenge Cup win in Catalan and the manner of it. But it seems that we've had a great week. We then maybe go to Leeds. It's a performance where they were the dominant team in the latter stage, something to build on, and then go back home after nearly 50 days that they've not played at the John Smiths and can't quite get it done against Salford, which is a team that you'd think they need to beat, because they're going to be vying maybe for a top 6 place against each other later in the season, and couldn't get it over the line. It'd be very interesting. I think the semi-final between Huddersfield and Warrington that's on the horizon. That is going to be fascinating. I think that Huddersfield have got people like Chris Hill, ready to come back. Ollie Russell not being allowed to go on loan is interesting. Does that mean that, again, Ian Watson perhaps isn't quite sure what his best halfback combination is and wants to keep Ollie in reserve, although it seems almost certain that with his contract up at the end of the season he's not going to be there next year. Another one will be fitting a DIY kitchen by the sounds of it. They are the great enigma, Huddersfield, at the moment, whereas Salford just keep overachieving. They the whole Paul Rowley thing. Paul Rowley resigns, Mark Sneyd resigns. You look at the best that they're getting out of some of the players that they've got. Ollie Partington now rumoured to be perhaps moving on to, I think Catalan is the favourite destination for him. But it doesn't seem to matter that there is clearly a core of spirit in this Paul Rowley team that takes them to victories when perhaps we wouldn't expect them to. And my hat again this week is off to them, because they did eke out the win and Huddersfield couldn't. Which, how many times last year did we say, Huddersfield were really close? Against all the big teams, they were within a score of most of them, but they couldn't quite get it over the line. Even against St Helens, they lose by a point, and you're going, but that's a game that really you probably didn't dominate, but had enough of the possession and position to win that game, but you couldn't do it. I don't know if it's psychological with Huddersfield, but it'd be really interesting to see who starts as favourite in that semi-final.
And then on Saturday, we had the big draw, the first one of the Super League season. Leigh 28, Castleford 28. Almost want to say it's a cliche, but probably feels more like a victory for the Tigers than it does for the Leopards. But I guess one of the important things for Leigh is Edwin Apape's back, and he was on the score sheet with a very fancy new hairstyle, and he was crucial to them in the last couple of years, and now will be crucial for them in trying to get some form together.
4-week ban for that hairstyle. Seriously, that was terrible. I was in Nottingham, staying near Trent Bridge, and I was watching on my phone, and I saw the hairstyle, and I was, what is going on? You'd be asking for your money back. No. In all seriousness, good to see him back, because he's a great player, and obviously so key for Leigh. That was a really, really odd game. It looked like Leigh had it won. We're cruising. Castleford, very predictable in attack. And it was only, for the last 20, 25 minutes, they started, being a bit more inventive, just being more unpredictable. And then they just roared back into it. And it was an absolutely crazy ending. And Golden Point was pretty engaging as well. So, it was great fare. And I still don't get these people complaining about Golden Point, because the two teams got a draw. They got a point each. That was fair. It was great entertainment, for a game that looked to be pretty much over, around the 50, 55-minute mark.
And I wasn't sure how Castleford were ahead after the first 20 minutes when it was all Leigh. Then Leigh clicked, and you thought, right, well, justice will be done for the dominance that they had in the early stages. And then I think credit to Rowan Milnes and his goal kicking. Those two conversions off either touchline, absolutely magnificent. And when Castleford play with that freedom of spirit, they're a difficult team. I think the changes that they've made, bringing in Tex Hoy and the seniors, it has made a difference. I think having Paul McShane back has been absolutely massive. I don't know whether this will be his last season, but he's playing as though he wants to go out on the highest possible note if it is. And just, we said it just before the break, I thought that Golden Point 10 minutes, if you didn't know a lot about rugby league and you just tuned in to see two teams going at it, absolutely hammer and tong, I loved it. I thought that 10 minutes was one of the highlights of the season.
Sorry, I just think someone's tweeted asking if we're going to investigate people inflating crowd figures as if this is the 1990s or something. But it was interesting to see Hull KR gave out an attendance on the telly, but it's not in the paper. So I don't understand how that works. We'll go through the fixtures in a bit.
We were told at a media briefing this week, which was mainly about grading and when it was going to be announced. It's Wednesday, the 23rd of October, for anybody that didn't see the news. That the RFL get audited crowd figures independently for every game. So whether the clubs announce it or use it as I think that the RFL feel that the clubs use crowds as a marketing tool. But if they want to put them out and say, we've got thousands of people, you really want to join us, and they haven't got quite so many, it actually doesn't matter. The people writing into newspapers or going on social media screaming that how can you be announcing grading points for fandom when we don't know how many people? They do know how many people are in the state. It's a pretty sophisticated system.
I mean, it's not just made up on it. No one IMG is writing on the back of a SIG packet, if such a thing exists. Leeds women in crisis fell because they've missed out on automatic qualification in the nines, but I assume they'll be given one of the wild cards because they are the defending champions. York, St Helens, Cardiff and Wigan winning their groups in Warrington yesterday, so they'll be at the finals in July.
Interesting that some clubs use that more as a development tournament. Didn't send their full strength teams, as you wouldn't. It gives you the chance to not only play some fringe players, but those that come back from injury. But the whole idea is it's a festival. So, hopefully everybody who went to Victoria Park in Warrington had a good day. It's a networking event that it's very rare all the teams get together. And you would hope that, maybe Leeds will get one of the wild card slots, because when you get to the finals time, you'd want more of the stars there. But also it opens a slot for perhaps a development team, which we've seen, Cardiff now go from an invitational slot to winning a group. So hopefully they'll they'll do it in the spirit in which it's supposed to. I just wish, and I don't know what anybody thinks of nines as a concept, but it doesn't seem strategic to just have one nines competition for women a third of the way into a season and nothing else with nines for women, men's, kids, whatever. What are we doing with it as a concept? And if it's not going to be shortened form in a World Cup, or if we ever get a Commonwealth Games again, then why do we bother doing
it? Why do we bother doing anything? Well done to the Saints play won the sprint. I've forgotten who it was now, because they had a sprint competition which they need to bring back, and all the players wearing glitter. Not sure if that's going to catch on, but should have put some on.
I can't stand for Phil criticising. I was at the inaugural World Cup Nines in 2019. It was the first and only and probably ever World Cup Nines. What an event.
Made Kelsey Gentles a social media superstar. And speaking of York, because this programme is thrown together like this, let's go into the Championship. Now, we spoke to Joe Gardner earlier in the year about the documentary on Sam Tompkins and how he didn't know how that would end. This York documentary series is going to be very interesting because York Knights, forget the Valkyrie, they're flying high or whatever at the moment, but York Knights, they're not flying high. One win from 7 at the bottom of the table, joint with Dewsbury Rams, who just lost their coach. They lose 36-16 at home to Whitehaven yesterday. What's going on at York?
That's the Richie Myler effect.
Don't say that, Joe. I was going to say Tom Lynham effect. I'd be in trouble for that as well. But it's just
I
working for them
don't
at the minute.
know.
They were 30 down as well, which I think you have got to give credit to Whitehaven for. But again, what's going to turn York's season around? And with the players that they've got clearly underachieving at the moment, well, they've got a semi-final this weekend, admittedly against high-flying Sheffield, who've already beaten them in the Challenge Cup. But, York are 80 minutes away from Wembley. If anything's going to revive your season, it perhaps is that game and the prospect of going to the National Stadium. But that has been a disastrous start. I think Paul Cook is a columnist in a magazine that comes out on Friday, which I'm obliged to say at least 3 times in this podcast. And he was saying that there's been he does the reviews as part of his role as an assistant coach there, and the players have been soft was the word that he used. So clearly they weren't any harder this weekend.
If I mute, that helps. Elsewhere in the Championship, Barrow 24, Batley 14, Dewsbury 21, Toulouse 38 with the Mike Stevenson stand. Featherstone 36, Halifax 16, Sheffield 10, Wakefield 36, sellout crowd 1,998. Aptly at the whatever it's called. But still, you couldn't watch it or listen to it anywhere else unless you were there. So another opportunity missed for the sport. Swinton 12, Bradford 38, and Widnes 16, Doncaster 14. Sounds like that was a cracker. Whatever Widnes' stadium is called, it's got lots of letters in it. I can't remember. Wakefield top, 2 points clear off Sheffield and Widnes. Then come Featherstone, Bradford, and Toulouse, making up the top 6 places. And just behind them, also on 6 points, Doncaster, Swinton, Whitehaven, and Barrow. It's a very tight division, the Championship, and as mentioned, teams got a week off apart from those in the 1895 Cup. Bradford, Wakefield, and York, Sheffield. I'm assuming one or both will be streamed on Sunday, but no announcement yet. And again, same thing applies to the Sheffield Wakefield game. I don't know what's going on, and people can moan about BBC local radio station not covering it, but clubs can take the initiative themselves to do stuff. What was streamed?
I think that was a big result for Wakefield, the magnitude of it. Both teams going into the game on 6 matches undefeated. Sheffield looking very much the real deal this year. A lot of progressive things happening around the club, off the field as well. And you would have thought that with the start they had to the season, that perhaps they would have been closer to Wakefield. It does seem that in the same way that John's saying, do you think London will go through the season winning a game? Do we think that Wakefield will go through the Championship losing a game? And you'd have to say that at the moment they are such a well-rounded squad with so many people they can bring in to change the way that they play. It's hard to see where Wakefield might come unstuck. I know we mentioned it about 3 or 4 times, but the semi-final this weekend is, the first test of it's do or die rugby league. which is different to how you approach a season. You rotate your squad. It does matter what the result is at the end of 80 minutes and not how you play. So I think, again, another great test for Wakefield this weekend, but it's hard to see where a defeat's going to come. They do remind me very much of, say, Toronto when they went through the Championship and did get promoted rather than when they didn't.
Well, just hopefully John's not writing about Wakefield in the same way he wrote about Toronto after that, but there you go. Keighley 18, Hunslet 26. That was streamed yesterday on the Sportsman. That was entertaining fair in League One. I guess, it was a surprise win because Keighley were minus 30 odd on the coupon. So Hunslet to go there and win. 4 tries from Ferreira. Looked a good atmosphere there at the Cougar Park. Big win for Hunslet. Big win for Oldham in terms of score. 74-0 over Newcastle. No surprises there. No Rochdale 56, Cornwall 24. Butts, Workington 16, Midlands 26. That's not a fluke result for them. Callum McClelland, again, man of the match. And it's good to see him, as was said the other week. A player who had a lot of hype around him as a youngster, but obviously hasn't worked out for him. But there he is leading the Hurricanes around, and they are 3 wins from 7. They are clear of Cornwall and Newcastle at the bottom end of the League One table and firmly in the middle.
I can remember interviewing him at Leeds when he was sort of coming through, and there was a lot hyped about him. Obviously went off to rugby union for 5 minutes and came back. But yeah, hopefully he can get his career back on track and stay fit.
We talk about signings of the season, but clearly he is one of them for Midlands in League One. I think it was brave of him to take that on when, as you say, as a junior, he was one of the most sought after talents in the Castleford area. Injuries scuppered him, but full credit to him for saying, I'll resurrect my career by going to the Midlands and actually taking on a dominant role and leading them around the pitch. And that is a big result. If we pointed at Hull KR saying they were the team of the week with their performance against St Helens, not far behind them is Midlands winning in Workington. Never an easy place to go. Obviously, clearly not won too many matches against what you might call established clubs. I refuse to use the word heartland, obviously. And he's at the forefront of it. So that's great. I think Hunslet winning opens up that division as well. You quite rightly have said how close the Super League and Championship is. Well, there's another hat thrown into the ring, but also no coincidence that this week Hunslet had some players on dual reg from Wakefield, including Miles Lawford. And if you're going to have players of that quality in League One, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, the one game in League One this week is Midlands versus Cornwall. So again, you'd expect a win for the home team there. Super League this week, final round before the Challenge Cup semis. We've got Warrington Hull KR on Thursday. Castleford St Helens and Leeds Salford on Friday. Leeds Salford is on the BBC. Catalans Leeds and Huddersfield Wigan, though, the other way around on Saturday. And London Hull FC on Sunday. Which game are we looking forward to most this weekend, John?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Hull KR Warrington is a really interesting game. Obviously, Hull KR in great form. Warrington, probably not in as good a form, but they're obviously a much changed beast this year. Both teams going to be in the cup semi-final in a fortnight. So yeah, I think Willie Pearce and Sam Burgess are mates. So always good to come up against your mates, and both teams quite interesting to watch. So I think that's a very nice Thursday night. I love a Thursday night game.
I think Castleford Saints is intriguing. Cass got confidence. They're back at home with the fans are a little bit more reinvigorated, and Saints under the microscope, which we don't see that often. So I think that'll be interesting. If Cass start better than they did against Leigh, play to the contours of their pitch that they know better than anybody else, and put Saints under pressure early, be really, really interesting to see how that develops. I think there are great games across the weekend, and because the competition is so tight, you could make a case that every one of them looks really interesting. Even I say in London Hull, you would tune into that on Sunday afternoon because I don't know what's going to happen in that one either. But I think John's probably right. It probably is going to be another defeat for London because they haven't got the size, and Hull are in that rebuilding phase where they're starting to know Jake Truman's back, and obviously that makes a huge difference when you're led around the field by somebody of his quality. But it's worth switching on to see what happens.
London 4, Hull 0 would be a great result for many reasons. Women's Super League on Saturday, one for the younger listeners. Featherstone versus St Helens, that kicks off at 2 at whatever Post Office Road's called these days. Huddersfield Wigan, which kicks off at 12 and is before the men's game, so a double header there. And then on Sunday, Warrington Barrow. Barrow given a 6-point start on a handicap. I think they'll win that one. They were +8 last week, and I should have got on then. And the big one, of course, and again, I don't know if this is going to be streamed anywhere, and I assume not at the minute because no one said anything, is York Leeds, which is obviously a repeat of last year's grand final and a great rivalry. And again, I'd have to go to York to see it, but I'd also have to go to Bradford. I'm lazy. I am the person at home who wants to watch everything. I've been able to flick between the snooker and the rugby and everything, at the darts and whatever. John doesn't understand any of this. And now I've got all these games I want to see this weekend, and I can't see any of them. Where's my, what's going on? I'll have to listen to Radio York, won't I, and Radio Leeds. So at least the BBC is still there for us. That's the one good thing.
What has happened to our league? Does anybody know? I mean, I know that they want to give the oxygen of publicity to Super League Plus, and they want people to subscribe to that. I get that. And as of tonight, I think we should mention that the Kevin Sinfield 7 in 7 in 7 documentary is available to purchase on Super League Plus. And having had the privilege of being there to see it at the premiere, do buy it. It's how you tell a story for the third or fourth time, but make it different and engaging and heart-wrenching. That's full credit to Ram Films who've done it, because it is, and you should watch it. And Kevin's honesty throughout the challenges and some of the ancillary stories are told about the research into MND, absolutely fantastic. But what has happened to our league? Surely with 1895 Cup semi-finals, with, as you say, a women's repeat of the grand final, at least one or two of those games should be on our league this weekend.
I just vote on things when they say, I get a message from my phone, vote on this and you get points, and then you can swap it for England tickets or stuff, which obviously England tickets for games that don't exist yet. We still don't know, by the way, with the England or the France-England game, it's going to be on Super League Plus. We know that. But we don't know if you're able to buy it as an extra, if you, certainly for subscribers. That detail's not been mentioned yet, has it? Or have I missed something?
No. Not to my knowledge, no, it's not been mentioned. I think it was just a single sentence in a press release that it was going to be on Super League Plus. And yeah, I mean, obviously they haven't publicly revealed the figures, but I would hazard a guess they're not. The subscriber take-up is not particularly large. Yeah.
I think there are negotiations still going on with the BBC. Whether that would be 1 or 2 or putting it on 3 or behind the red button. But I just think if we don't have an international on the BBC, then that is a retrograde step, as Brian Noble mentioned in his column in Forty20 magazine, out in the shops this Friday.
London Roosters through to the semi-finals of the Wheelchair Challenge Cup as well, beating Edinburgh, who played in their first game of the competition this week. Hull versus Catalans, I think it's on Saturday, isn't it? And then the semi-finals next week.
The great thing about that, and we've spoken about it ever since we started talking about the potential development of wheelchair rugby league, is it doesn't have to follow the footprint of the men's running game or even the women's running game. So to have in consecutive weeks Leeds against Hereford and London against Edinburgh, we get this right in terms of how we promote it, then that is showing a different profile of what rugby league means and where it's important and how the game is progressing geographically. I think, London playing Edinburgh in York, what a fantastic event for rugby league.
I was catching up with the What Would Brian Bevan Say podcast last night. So I'm a week behind. I'm behind on all my things at the moment. And they compared Sam Burgess to Margaret Thatcher. So I sent a message to the What Would Brian Bevan people, say, well, what does that make Richie Milo? Is he Michael Foote or Neil Kinnock? Again, John's face has gone blank for those who are listening. And they said Dame Shirley
I've heard
Williams.
of these people, Rich. I've heard of these people.
Is Burgess Thatcher-esque? Does he come across that way to you?
Is it the hair? Is it the voice? Is it the love of Tory politics? The hatred of mines? No, I don't get the reference, Rich. Yeah.
It's his stubborn nature, perhaps.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
lack of U-turns. He doesn't like U-turns.
Right. Well, I don't think his driving record's particularly flawless, so we probably should steer away from that before you get any more complaints.
Sam Burgess doesn't have your number, Phil, does he?
No, look,
I've no beef with Sam at the moment, as far as I know.
He's doing a great job. I mean, yeah, I think as we covered earlier, the fracas. I don't know what stoush. What would you call it?
Stramash.
Yeah.
Brouhaha. Imbroglio. Yeah.
The schmozzle in the tunnel gate, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was interesting. But I think anyone who's watched him play knows he's an uncompromising character, isn't he? He played a grand final with a fractured cheekbone. He's as hard as nails, and I imagine he's the kind of coach where players want to run through brick walls for him. That's what because obviously he's got the respect of players because what he did himself. So I imagine that's his mold as a leader. I don't really think. Well, Margaret Thatcher may have had that. The Iron Lady. So the Iron Burgess. I don't know. Doesn't really seem to work, does it?
Get on some t-shirts. What would Brian Bevan people say? I just remembered. I was supposed to mention it an hour ago, and then I forgot. But that's how my brain works. John, are you working on anything exciting at the minute that we can see as exclusives on Patreon in the next few days?
I'm working on something that's going to take quite a while to get up, so I can't really talk much about that. But yeah, it is in the works. Will be written at some point, but involve a lot of interviews and a lot of research. But yeah, no, there'll be some few other things. I'm sure. Lots of movement in the transfer market at the moment. Obviously, some coaching, news as well. Yeah, I don't think Leigh will be coming to Hull FC. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. So, lots to come.
Rewrite those lists if you've written them. 5 people are going to go to Hull FC with Leigh Briers knocked off. Steve Mascall put you on his radio station. Surely By the Balls must be on there.
Yes, we are. We're finally on the rugbyleague.com radio channel. So thank you to Steve for allowing us to grace his lovely airwaves.
Phil, what's in the magazine?
It's a big feature on youth rugby and are enough players coming through and are they of the right quality and why we need to focus on that and perhaps aren't doing enough at the moment. That's one of the features. The Wigan Hull KR game is the game of the month, which gives us a chance to wax lyrical about Hull KR and what they're building. Big international story about what's happening in America and how it's looking quite promising there for the most part, but they do seem to be finally moving forward in a more united fashion. All the usual stuff. Profile of Richie Myler actually as well on page 5, which will be worth reading.
Do you think on the much vaunted American League, which Steve Mascall has written about, Phil, do you think it will actually happen? Will they actually play games?
Steve Scanlon's version won't happen. He's I think he's the latest Walter Mitty figure, and we do touch on that. And from the limited amount of knowledge I know, is he's pestering the NRL to back what he's doing, and they just don't see any value in promising the earth and delivering little because we've been there so many times before. I think having over 40 teams now under the banner of the USARL, and there's some detail in there about how it's going to work up to their premiership. So they've split the country west and east, and they've now got enough teams to make sure that the national champion is actually meaningful and valid. And some of the clubs that had broken away from the USARL, particularly in the northeast, are coming back in. North Sydney Bears has got a partnership now with the Brooklyn 13. So things are happening. I think, having NRL input into the USARL competition with Joe Kelly, of the CEO of the Roosters, now on the board, and Bernie Gurr, who lives in California, but is a fine administrator in his own right in the NRL, as the treasurer of the USARL. I think we're actually building something underneath Vegas. I don't think we should underestimate the value of Vegas for the full 5 years it's going to be over there. And if that can spill over into a meaningful domestic competition that's well organised, and that most, if not all, of the players that currently play will become under the umbrella of, then yes, that will make the USA national team stronger. It will make I think there's plans for women's, and for the first time ever, youth is now going to come under USARL, whereas in the past it's all been, if you want to set something up, you go ahead and do it. It seems to have a coherence to it, and I think that's the point of this particular article, to say actually Vegas has been the catalyst for that. So yeah, it might work for the first time. Plus, we've got a feature from the great George Clark on New Zealand Warriors and how they're breaking down barriers over there at the moment, and popularity-wise, if not on the field, overtaking the All Blacks.
They are doing very well popularity-wise, but not too well on the field this season.
Well, there's still plenty of time to come. That's the good thing. There is no time left for this program, though. That's it from us. We'll be back next week. Buy the magazine when it's out next week. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Do that to John's stuff as well. We'll see you back next week. Just best of luck to everyone running the Robborough Marathon. It's this weekend, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, particularly those people doing the half marathon for the first time.
Good luck to all those people. I'm not doing any marathons. You'd be unsurprised to hear, but we'll see you next week with another exciting edition, fingers crossed, of 4020 Not Live.